Welcome to Rhythm of Previews, where we check out the preview chapters of A Rhythm of War, the fourth Stormlight Archive novel. I am Danielle with the 17th Shard.
And hi, I'm Marvin, coming to you live from Shadesmar today. And I've also going to channel my inner Archon a little bit. I've actually got something to show off today. I hope it's visible.
Very cool.
Art stuff and things and cool laser engravings.
That's a laser engraved phone case.
Yep.
That's really cool.
So yeah, once you have a laser, everything looks like it can be lasered on. So.
That's awesome. I really like that. Maybe the Sanderson store will take some tips. Well, as always, there's going to be some Rhythm of War spoilers. And then we're also going to have some Cosmere spoilers too. Some Mistborn, some Warbreaker, the whole shebang. So with that said, what kind of annotations did we get from Brandon for chapter 12?
Yeah, so Brandon actually, he confirmed that we know Rock left or said goodbye to Kaladin last chapter, and Brandon confirmed that it's actually will be his last scene we'll have of Rock in this book. He'll not show up again, at least until probably his novella, or I hope until his novella. I guess he probably will show up again in Stormlight 5, maybe, but we won't see him again in Rhythm of War. And Brandon explained that while he likes exploring these side characters a little bit and fleshing them out, one of his main goals with the story was to really keep it focused on the main characters and the main storylines, because Brandon knows that in these long-running epic fantasies, you have that issue that you have a lot of side characters and you'll easily get lost in their story arcs rather than completing a real one or a main one. And while Brent knows that Stormlight Archive isn't short, it's everything but short, but he knows that he thinks that he at least did a good job of keeping things focused on the main plot so far, and I think, yeah, he really did. We got the interludes all the time in between, but that's where he can get wild and show us other stuff, but the main plot basically is all there. Yeah.
They kind of give us a break between the big storylines. Yeah, I guess this kind of confirms we're not going to be going to the peaks this book. We're not going to be seeing a lot of the stuff that's going on there.
Yeah, unfortunately not, but that just makes me look forward a lot more to the novella when we eventually get it. So that's also cool. And then in the annotation, Brandon also acknowledged that that he was set to have Bridge 4 basically dissolve as the unit we have gotten to know in the previous books. So they won't be as a tightly knit group anymore. But Brandon thinks that it's necessary for one to allow the characters their own growth and to develop more, because if Bridge 4 stay together all the time, they'd not develop much further than they were in book 1 or at the end of book 1. So there's that, and it's simply just more realistic for groups to sort of dissolve as they go on naturally. And he sort of agreed with us. We talked about it last time, that it was really fun to see Adolin, Kaladin, and Shallan just sort of being humans, I guess, and living their life and doing stuff together. And Brandon thinks, for one, it's necessary to put in these interactions, and he also actively looks for places where he can actually put these scenes in to give a break sort of from all the action. So that's cool to know that he's on board with that.
Yeah, the hallmark of a good writer. Not using your characters as props for your plot line. They're people. They have their own, stories.
Yeah, and he can afford to, in these long books, he has a lot of space to put in these moments, so why shouldn't he?
It just makes it feel more real and immersive, too.
Yep.
Instead of just having, okay, now this character goes here, and then they do this. And Well, chapter 13's Epigraph. So it's more from Navani, and she's going into the gemstones now, instead of just the metal cage. She said fabrials can be made conjoined, where one gemstone that contains a spren can be divided and the halves of the gems and the spren work together like one. And Navani explains that flame spren and rubies are the easiest ones to divide, but she doesn't go into any detail about why that is or why other spren do not split as evenly, as easily, or at all. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's cool to know that she at least goes into these conjoiner fabrials at all, because we haven't had them yet. And I hope she goes on to explain more about it, because it is a little sad to not see a more detailed explanation of how the spren splitting works, because, I mean, you're splitting a freaking spren right there. That's it's one entity technically. So how does that splitting work? So yeah, that's interesting to me. And I want it answered.
I know. Yeah. It makes me wonder, like, have we seen Fabrial that used this concept? Because it reminded me of like Span Reed, where they have the ruby and it's like two halves that work in conjunction when you're writing. The other pen is writing, possibly. And then I was also thinking the way that she described the fourth bridge, how it has two different, like one is here and one is in the tower. But I don't think that one was rubies. For some reason.
Don't actually remember. I think it might have been ruby. So yeah, but I guess Fabrials, Span Reed's instances of these conjoiners, and also like the prototypes we sort of saw where she sort of pulled up the tarps and or the Archer station and stuff like that. And I guess the fourth bridge sort of is the culmination of all that. So yeah, definitely a sort of very versatile technology, I guess, these conjoiners.
Yeah. It definitely shows that these are very well thought out, like Magitech type science that Brandon has invented, and a lot more detail into it than when I first thought. I was like, oh, it's going to be, hand wavium, but it's not. It's like a real concept that he's come up with. Yeah.
And I find it interesting that like flame spren especially are very easy to divide like that. I think it sort of feels okay because like logically in a way, because flames aren't really contained objects as such, but they are flames, I guess. So they are more volatile, I guess you could say. And so maybe the flame spren have it easier due to that, but I don't know.
Yeah, like when you think of, like, this is what I was thinking of when I was reading it. Like if you think of a candle and you take another candle and you light that candle from that flame, they're both going the same strength, but it's not like dividing it in half or anything. It's still, still a fire burning.
Yeah, that's makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I guess you could definitely see this as an analogy. And I actually just looked it up on the cover mind because I can never remember these. But the ruby is also the Dustbringer Chana sort of gemstone, and its essence is fire. So that makes a lot of sense that flame spren and ruby go together well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some more interesting information about that. Because I was thinking last chapter, I was like, oh, well, that seems like a pretty good way to end her little speech. And then she just keeps going about the gemstones now. And then I'm thinking, like, are there any other parts of the Fabrial that we have to think about?
And what I actually want to know now with these sort of split spren is she has described what a soulcaster looks like in the cognitive realm, but she hasn't described what a normal Fabrial, if you want, looks like. And I'd really be interested to see what the split spren would look like on the cognitive side. Because,
or if it would just look the same, because the way she's describing it is like it's divided here, but they're working the same. Like there's really no difference in how the spren is.
And then you would have to wonder, like, is it right in the middle of the two physical halves? Because like the cognitive side actually corresponds location-wise, at least roughly, to the physical one. So yeah, like definitely, I hope she goes into that in the future epigraphs. Like we have 6 left, I think. So of 5, she has some room still to expand these.
And then I was also like, how do they do all of this? Like working with gemstones is a molecular level like art. And like, how are they doing this with the tools that they have currently? You know, like if you cut a ruby down the center, like how can you divide it evenly? I don't know. It just seems curious.
Actually wonder, like, I don't know geology at all, but whether ruby maybe has some properties that also make it easier to maybe split without completely breaking it. But yeah.
Like its lattice is a certain way that it can be divided right down the middle or something, like a straight cut.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
Please tell us in the comments if you do know. So.
Yes, please. Alrighty. Well, let's dig in to chapter 13, Another Hunt. Shallan is back in Erythru, and it seems to be business as usual for her now. She's the wife of High Prince Adolin, so she's got some responsibilities. Apparently, she's working on ledgers and things with Radiant. Adolin is off riding horses, so Shallan decides to go through her letters, some of which apparently contain sensitive information. One in particular says, "The deal is set and arranged. The spren will come." And then she promptly burns that. So then she decides to visit her brothers who have arrived, and they're just down the hall from her, it seems like. And she's sitting by the fire or the Fabrial, warmth Fabrial. And she's drawing in her sketchbook a memory of her childhood, and she's remembering the family hearth. And her brother Jushu is watching as she's drawing, and he comments on it. He's like, "That's really weird." Later on, he's out on the balcony with the other brother, and who is that? Balat. And they're outside with a guardsman who turns out to be Mraize, and he signals her to meet him in the garden. And so she meets him in the garden, and he's convincing her to continue working with the Ghostbloods by promising her all of his knowledge if she just helps him out searching out Rastares, who is supposedly hiding in Lasting Integrity, which is the Honor-Spren fortress in Shadesmar. And they discuss some of Eili's findings, like her notebook where it mentions Nalthis and Scadrial, which he corrects her Rosharan pronunciation, Nalathis and Scadariel. And he tells her about his purpose, kind of, and the troubles that he's having porting Stormlight to other lands across expanses where the gemstones that are holding him are kind of leaking it. So, juicy chapter.
So juicy. Don't even know where to begin. Like,
yes, this is why we're saying there's Warbreaker and Mistborn spoilers, like all.
Like, what in damnation is going on? Brenton says, "Oh no, Stormlight, the front half won't be very Cosmere heavy at all," and now we're getting all these references already, and
I know, it's crazy. Like, I freaked out when she just found the notebook and read those two names, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And now he's like correcting her in her pronunciation. I did not expect this to show up as quickly or as obviously as it has, but it definitely reveals a lot about the Ghostbloods and Mraize in general, you know.
Yep. And I think that might be like when Shallan had to prompt him, that when with like Nalathis and Scadarial. So I feel like the Ghostbloods sort of have a policy that once somebody finds something out, you might as well tell them everything, because why not? Or at least as much as they can infer from that, if they were to investigate a little more. So yeah, that sort of fits with what Mraize then says, that once she would find Rastares, which is like another thing we'll have to talk about in the first place, that he'll just tell her everything that she wants to know. So even about her past, which is of course very intriguing. So
yes, it is. I know that he's very obviously manipulating her, and he's not even being subtle about it. And he's like, listen, I know that you want information and you pursue knowledge. So I'll give you this knowledge if you do this one thing for me, So it's obviously not going to be an easy task if he's going to give up all of this information for her to go and find Restaris.
Yeah. And speaking of Restaris, it's good to know that like we get confirmation here that he is in fact a man.
Yes.
Like we didn't have his gender up until now, and it's very interesting to see that he's apparently found asylum at the Honest Brand capital, I think, or at least their fortress.
The fortress,
so, yeah. And that sort of makes you wonder whether he's always operated out of Shadesmar, more so than like out of the physical realm. And maybe that's a far stretch, maybe that he might even be a cognitive shadow or something like that. Because so he has some favors to call in with the Spren, maybe because he has been around for longer than you might think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good theory. I know a lot of people are thinking that he's Calcier or something like that.
Yeah, Restaris was the Ghost Bloods. Yeah, that's a very common theory. And I mean, that this chapter really made me reconsider. Like, I always sort of, it won't be Calcier because we'll have to deal with the Ghost Bloods in some capacity in this arc. And Brandon said it won't be so Cosmere heavy. So having Calcier show up would be really weird. But
I mean, maybe this is like ramping it up to the next arc.
Yeah, definitely could see the Ghost Bloods taking more of a, I guess, active role, or at least more of a foreground role in the back half here.
And then when he mentioned that Restaris was hiding out in Lasting Integrity, he also mentioned that there might be other people there. So it makes me wonder if there's going to be like even more different little crossovers or Easter eggs if we do see other humans living in the Spren stronghold. And I wonder, like, who could those be,
Just going to casually meet Frost or something like that.
Oh my God. Like, wow, what the hell? I was thinking more like Chris or someone
maybe, probably. Could work out.
I just think that would be really interesting.
Or maybe even like we know that Demo and Garrett and the others were there in Way of Kings, so maybe they also sought refuge or something like that in Lasting Integrity. Could also be a case. Yeah, but definitely a lot more Cosmere stuff in this than I'd have thought.
Like my first idea about the whole Calcier thing, like the cognitive shadow, I don't like it because I want like new characters and new I want things to get bigger rather than, closing down in on like certain specific individuals. But that being said, it would be really interesting to see what like Rosharan would think of him, because the only real point of view that we saw him was Vin, who basically like had idolized him, and then but Brandon like has said that he's a psychopath. He could have been a bad guy if he had gone down any other path or anything like that. So it'd be interesting to see that if that happens. Who knows?
And like what especially made me think that, or at least reconsider that theory in this chapter, was all the connection talk that Mraize gave here. It's like also really exciting that we get like some real in-world information on how connection affects cognitive shadows and apparently investiture in general, which to me is new. I don't think we've had this before, that like even you wouldn't be able to take a sphere full of stormlight off Rosha so easily. So yeah,
Mraize said that it would run out, or it was very difficult to travel with it. But it makes me really confused about like, so we know that Wit or Hoyd bonded to Spren, but in this chapter, Mraize is saying like you can't bring Spren off world, and you can't, like he even said to Shallan, like you as a Knight Radiant can't leave Roshar. He said that Roshar and Ashen and Braze are Braze.
Brace, yeah.
That they are her prison. So it makes me really confused about this. Like maybe I'm just fuzzy on details about connection with the capital C, but like how did these world hoppers even do it?
Yes, so I think Anomancy is easier in that regard because you have you only have connection to preservation directly. You don't, and you sort of get fueled via the metal isn't the investiture you get fueled by, so you can use it off-world because you don't actually take, or you can use metal or Roshan metal to do it, and the connection to preservation is sort of spiritual. And yeah, as far as Hoyt getting off-world again with now that he has bonded his Bren, that's actually like, I think we even got a WOP on that he'll have to figure that out now. That like he wouldn't necessarily have bonded his Bren if he hadn't already figured it out or something like that. I'd have to look it up. So yeah, it's definitely a problem for him that he now has bonded his Bren. So
yeah, it makes me wonder like what the actual boundaries are for the 3 planets in Shadesmar. Like how far is far, like what's the size of their actual prison, because we know Shadesmar is like a plane, right? And so we don't have like different planets that they can just travel to.
And it like Race just casually mentions like Ashen and Brace, and it's quite interesting to me that Shallan just sort of takes it in stride and doesn't even question it too much. So I wonder whether they like they do know that Ashen and Brace are sort of alternative names for what they call like the Tranquilin Halls and Damnation. So
yeah, I think they learned about them in Oathbringer, but maybe like in that year they've kind of done more research about it or even traveled to like see what it's all about.
That's what has me excited, like because Ray says it like, yeah, you can only go to Brace and Ashen, but that's already a huge deal. I feel like if you haven't been off planet before, that's kind of a big deal. So yeah, I wonder whether they've at least, it could also be that they've learned about it from the Heralds, because they have Ash and Tal.
And then that kind of makes me wonder if that's going to be used for, because Shallan now needs to go into Shadesmar and find Restars, but she has to come up with an excuse to go there, to a reason for why she's going to go there. So I was thinking maybe she's going to disguise it like a research expedition or something, or I don't know.
Yeah, so we actually know this already sort of from the Amazon blurb, because it says that like, oh, the Honor Sprint don't want to bond anymore Windrunners, which we've learned in this chapter already.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's just like the real reason is that she wants to go find the stars, but sort of the official reason will be that they will lead the envoy to lasting integrity that will just negotiate with the Honor Sprint.
Yeah, I still haven't read that blurb, but I remember you read it out loud on one of the previous episodes.
Right, exactly. And so I was waiting for that explanation, because Shallan and Adrian are not necessarily the most obvious candidates for being that envoy. So
yeah, you would almost think that it would be Kaladin, like especially now that he's, not allowed to fight or anything. So
yeah, either Kaladin or Delena, I guess, because that's sort of also a very bondsmithy activity to convince Bren, I guess.
But he's busy.
Yes.
Yeah, my thoughts were like maybe she's going to explain to Dalinar about a little bit about what Iali's writings were about. Maybe she's going to be like, listen, I really need to go there because I got to follow this lead, And I'm just thinking of her as Nancy Drew because of the cover, but
yeah.
Yes, your cover.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess we now know what Adel and Shallan will be up to in part 2 exactly. At least Shallan, what she has as her sort of ulterior motive, I guess. Yeah, that's exciting.
And then other Spren topics that were presented in this chapter was that Mraize wanted to bond to Spren. And
yes.
Yeah. And so she got that letter that she burned about like, we'll send a Spren to you. It's exciting.
That like what I didn't even think about it up until now, but how did Shanat place that letter there? Like how did she write it? I guess. Does she have human agents, or can she just do that?
Well, so my thought was, you know how Navani received that letter by Spanreed about like from a mysterious person. So that's what my like immediate connection was like. Maybe that was what was going on here.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, could definitely see that.
Or like maybe there's like agents out there on behalf of. I don't even want to try and pronounce that.
Shanat.
Yeah. I'm not even trying that thing.
The Take of Secrets, I think.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. Exactly. Just like Aritium is the last desolation. Just like that. So. Anyway, that's really exciting that like Shanat is sending Spren for them to like she's for the way she puts it, she doesn't send them to bond one, but to find candidates to maybe bond. So
yeah, and Mraize is being like a little petulant. He's like, "Well, I wanted a promise that I was going to get one." She's like, "Listen, buddy, like this is as good as you're going to get." And then she even said that this fella doesn't trust people because they're watching how Renarin is being treated, and so she doesn't want to promise any one particular person a Spren. She needs to like kind of scope them out first.
Yeah. And I mean that makes and it makes sort of sense because that's how normal Spren or like Nahel bonds are formed as well. So why shouldn't these enlightened Spren do the same? And that like, but that Mraize is so interested in, or like he wants that bond for himself, and like we know that he collects a lot of stuff. Like in this scene, we actually see his Avia and how he apparently catches a mole, and yeah. And but that just makes me wonder whether Mraize sort of also is like Hoyt in a way, collecting magic systems for himself, maybe, or like he attempts to at least. Because we also, like Shallan says in an early, or like in when she goes into the garden, she says that Mraize instantly noticed her, or like noticed her even before she was there, and that sort of made me instantly think of Warbreaker and Life Sense. And like with enough breath, you could have a better life sense. So that would fit very well with.
I mean, that's a lot of breath. I looked it up, 1,000 breaths. Like, I feel like
life sense.
That's true.
Yeah,
but I feel like even if he has like extra breath, that Shallan for sure would notice. Because, you know, his clothes and everything would be more vibrant and stuff. But she does mention that he looks kind of weird in his guard uniform and stuff. So maybe he's just got like a little bit extra or something. And she doesn't really know what to look for. And
another thing I has sort of theorized, or at least suspected it might be, is that his Avia, that's his like Avia ability. I don't know whether that would work with the range because it was quite far away when Shallan met him there, and he wasn't always around when they met. So, or it wasn't always around when they met. So, yeah, could be anything. But I feel breath seem quite likely because I think those are also relatively easy to get off word because they are not entirely like they're very physical in what they are. Yeah, and it would just fit sort of with Mraize collecting stuff, and why we shouldn't collect a few breath.
I wonder if he is trying to piece together anything about Hoyt and his reasoning for collecting. And so maybe he's like kind of following in his footsteps to collect, just to like see maybe if I collect enough, I'll figure out why I'm collecting all this stuff.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but actually just something completely different because you mentioned that Shallan would have noticed him or his sort of color aura around him.
Mm.
That made me think of the earlier thing where as soon as Whale took over, Whale didn't see the world as brightly or like as colorfully, I guess, or as vibrantly as Shallan. And yeah, I find that very interesting because, or like the strata in Urithiru, we know, or like there's the common theory that Search Miners or Radiants see them more clearly or they see more colors in them, and it would sort of fit with Whale not really seeing herself as a light weaver.
Yeah, definitely that. And then I was also thinking, like, from an artist perspective, when I talk to people about like colors, a lot of people say, oh, like red is red, you know, and that's what I was thinking, like Vale doesn't really care about like, you know, shades and tones and things. And so she kind of just tunes it out, or maybe it's just an aspect of like her being a light weaving. Maybe like, it's just like everything is a little duller because she's not actually a real person.
Yeah, maybe. And like Wade definitely doesn't light weave. I think like when she says, or she tells Shallan to change their hair color again and things like that. So yeah, it's like they definitely have each have their own responsibilities, and Shallan or the three really compartmentalize them. So yeah, wonder where that will lead, especially with the other stuff we saw in this chapter.
Yeah, and then we also get a mention of this new formless character where Shallan is like kind of repressing it, but she knows that it's there. And I feel like Mraize is kind of aware of something else, that she's like a new persona of hers. And he even says like to her that he's going to help like reveal information to her and everything so she can get all of the facts and everything. So he's trying to, it almost makes me feel like he's trying to help her get over this big trauma that she had back in her past.
Yeah, but I don't think Mraize would do that just like for the sake or like for Shallan. I feel like that probably is going to also play into it, that will probably be Shallan's final truth. And once she speaks that, she'll be a fifth truth light weaver, probably. Like I don't think we've have it confirmed that she swore or said 4 already, but like when you count it up, it makes sense. And yeah, just I think Mraize probably is behind that and wants her to sort of become the ultimate radiant weapon.
And she was even thinking about like how she saw a pattern like way before, Jasna ever like started her whole radiant journey. But it's very interesting. So when she was drawing the hearth and the creation spren showed up and everything, and you see one of them is necklace dragging along the ground, and she distinctly points that one out, like she knows what it is and she's really trying to repress it. And I don't know, it's just frustrating because like we know that she and Vale really is forcing her to confront this, and she knows that she's going to be confronting it, but it's just frustrating that she's like so adamant not to even look at that necklace or acknowledge it in any way.
Yeah, and that's actually like sort of has Shallan has regressed there in a way, because like one of her or two of her truths were that she killed her mother and her father. So she has, you would have thought that she has internalized these, but she's actually really trying to lose the memory of them, or at least stow them away. And it's interesting also to see that she's going back to her brothers and sort of trying to go back to the past, but not the real past, or not all the way back, because there lies pain. And so I don't know whether it's even good at all that she goes to see her brothers again, because for one, of course, she's reunited with her family, and that's cool. And I actually almost already forgot again that they came to Urithiru at the end of Oathbringer. But yeah, I don't quite know how I want to feel about that, I guess, that she sees them again.
But she has been actively trying to figure herself out. Like, she says that she went to the Ardents and talked to them about other people who have, dissociative identity disorder, which they don't call it that, obviously. But she does mention, like, they kind of treat them like freaks, and like they're aware of that as a condition. But and then she's like, after she's thinking about that, she's like, I've stabilized. Like, I have my 3, and things are getting better, and so maybe she's going back to her family because she feels like she's strong enough, but she's kind of in denial about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like that she's talking to her brothers, because it reminds her of how far she's come since, Way of Kings. Like, they treat her like, little sister, but she looks at them like, kind of like, grow up,
Yeah, that is. And I actually find quite interesting that Yushu has apparently gotten even worse at his stealing, and I think he was the gambler, so he got even worse at that. It reminded me that, and also like why Mraize would know things about Shallan's past. We do know that the the Davar family was always sort of influenced by an unmade.
Mm-hmm.
So that would explain the interest that the Ghostbloods have in them at all. And we know that Stewart, or what he was, like the guy who actually operated the Soulcaster that they had, he was a Ghostblood. Mm-hmm. So they probably had informants with them from the very beginning, sort of, or like when they were little children. And so that's why they know stuff about Shallan's past, I feel.
Mm-hmm. And then we see Balat, and he had that problem with like hurting animals and stuff. But she's like, Shallan was even thinking, he's gotten better. Like, he's now married to this very nice woman who is helping him, So I don't know. I mean, I don't have a problem with her talking to her brothers again and like kind of reconnecting with her family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's going to be very good for her to do that.
Probably in the long run, it will be, I guess, yeah. Something else I found interesting with like Ballad's wife, who's Elita, she actually, or Shallan mentions that she actually has come to like her quite a lot. And that's a quite drastic change from earlier, I think, because she always sort of described her as a little dull, I think. Mm-hmm. So that's good to see that her outlook or her view of Elita has changed in that way. And also in her past, Shallan always sort of wanted the family for herself, and now she actually lets somebody else in. That's also really good to see.
Yeah, maybe Shallan's just learning how to not be so judgmental.
Maybe.
Yeah, she does have a problem with that. That's a huge criticism of her character, which, I mean, I can see it too, even though I'm a big Shallan fangirl. She definitely has flaws as far as being like judgy and stuff. So it seems like she's getting better about that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's definitely growing up.
But yeah, with Formless, like, this seems like a new persona of Shallan's, but I feel like maybe it was there from the beginning. Like, I don't think it's a new thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably just the personification of all the repressed memories in a way. Like, she's always they always were there, these memories. She just completely ignored them, and now they are sort of coming to the or trying to come to the surface, and they just take the form of Formless, I guess. So that might just be how she is trying to cope with it internally and doesn't realize it, and eventually it will bubble up, and just hopefully not in a situation where it'll just completely overwhelm her.
Yeah. Well, so it's not like a real theory or anything, but what I'm thinking is, so Mraize was alluding that one of the Lightweavers is his spy, because she was like, is it one of Adolin's spies? And he's like, no, heck no, I'm not going to deal with those people. I don't need them. But my first thought, which is probably crazy, but my first thought was like, what if it's some aspect of Shallan's that killed Ili and is working separate from the three, and maybe Formless is coming up to kind of stop that from happening, or maybe it is Formless. Who knows? Mm-hmm. I don't know, because that's really close to Shallan, and that would be a real twist if something like that was to happen.
And I mean, it would definitely, I've seen other people also express that, because it would really fit with the unreliable narrator that Shallan represents, and that would be unreliable turn to 11, because that's stuff you don't even get in the books and still happens. So yeah, could definitely see it, but I'm not sure. I feel like it probably is a more mundane Lightweaver, or it's not Shallan or one of her personal alters, but I could definitely see it as well. It's not out of the cards for me, at all.
Yeah. Well, the other Lightweavers that were there were Gaz, Ish. What is his name? Ishna. And what was the other one? Red. It was Red.
Red. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, so those were the other three Lightweavers that were there when Ili died, and I really don't want it to be one of them. Just
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just feel like that would be kind of disappointing.
Yeah, out of those three, I'd probably say it's most likely to be, or if it was one of them, it would most likely be Ishna, because she already, at the beginning, or in Oathbringer, she had interest in becoming a Ghostblood, so that sort of gives her a motive, I guess, because she wants to rise up in the Ghostbloods, and so spying on Shallan, or doing stuff next, or spying on Shallan basically would sort of serve her towards that purpose.
Wouldn't she be so obvious?
Yeah, it's she'd be the obvious choice, but
yeah,
at least out of those three, she'd also be she'd be the obvious choice.
Yes. I don't know. That's just crazy theory time with me.
We haven't talked about him at all this video, but you have mentioned Adolin very briefly, and how Shallan at the I think it was Shallan who said Adolin is with the horses again, and while she's taking care of the ledgers and everything, which is very Adolin. And also then later on she sees Adolin is riding Gallant, so Daliner's Rashadium. And that really made me wonder, we already saw, Sureblood, which is Adolin's horse, is dead, and he doesn't need a new one, but it would be cool for him to get a new one. And I feel like maybe he sort of will pick up Gallant's bond in a way, because Rashadium are quite special in that regard, because Daliner doesn't really need him anymore. So it would be cool if something like that happened.
I really hope in this book we get a lot more. I don't know enough about them to really have any theories about them. We know that they have the music spren that go around them, and that they're kind of like a mixed breed, because they have stone hooves. Yeah. And they do form bonds and stuff. So there's so much about them, but then there's also so much we don't know.
Yeah. It's just how intelligent are they, for instance? That would be interesting to know. It's cool to see Adolin take care of Gallant, I guess, because Daliner, as you said earlier, is busy right now and probably doesn't have too much time to take care of him. So yeah, that's also
a big war horse needs to work out and go running once in a while. And then Adolin probably has, a real hole in his heart for, poor Sureblood. So maybe he just needs to kind of, adopt Gallant. But yeah, it's good that he's our normie. He's there riding horses, he gets home and he just wants to go riding.
And another fun sort of little no, side note about Adolin basically was when actually Shallan noticed Elita. She said something like, "It's good," or like, "It's not easy with somebody from the Davar family," or something like. I can't exactly remember the line, but something like that. So she really values Adolin, I feel, and like he can cope with her, and that's really good for her and good support. So yeah, they just good together.
a lot of people who don't like Shallan and Adolin together, which I'm not one of them, but I can see the points. They say like she hasn't told him about the ghost blood, she doesn't trust him, this and that. But with this whole storyline where she's literally going to lasting integrity for the ghost bloods, like with Adolin, it's going to come out. Like there's no way that he's not going to find out in this book. Like there's, and then she's probably going to want to control the way he finds out about her connection with the ghost bloods. Like she won't want him to just find out from some event happening. She'll want to tell him, you know?
Yeah.
So that'll be something to look forward to.
Yeah. And I feel like, like regarding that it's not good that she isn't sharing that with him. But she's already been so close already. Like she wanted to tell him, but didn't in the end. So I feel like maybe she'll just naturally tell him at some point when she feels it's right for them or for him to know. So yeah. But something else actually just you reminded me of when you said they go to lasting integrity. What Mace also told Shara is that, or Whale, is that they will know what to do with Restaris once they see him. So I really wonder what that's all about, because do they know Restaris maybe? Like is he like it's just an alias and he's actually a known person, and so Vale or Shallan will instantly know what to do, or is it something less obvious or less obvious, I guess?
Yeah, that was a curious line. I don't really know what to think about it. Like, like what does he mean? Like he has so many little subtle ways of saying something, and maybe it doesn't mean what we're thinking it means, you know? Or maybe he's like, you'll have to decide what to do instead. Like you'll come across like a situation where you're gonna have to make a snap decision or something.
Yeah, that could also be. So yeah, one final thing from me maybe just about this chapter was what I also find really cool to see here is how Shallan reacts to all the fabrials that they now have. Like she talks about the heating fabrial and others, which I already forget again what it was. But yeah, she talks about them like she fears that they would make them quite lazy, and that I guess, or she guesses, Light Eyes already are pretty lazy, so they become even lazier. Just found it really cool to see how this Magitech is affecting or starting to affect their society quite deeply, and it's basically an alternative industrialization, if you will. And it's cool to see how it manifests in this other world. And
I feel like a lot of it comes from Navani now that she is married to Dalinar. Like she already had a lot of power, but with Gavilar, he kind of treated her like she just had little hobbies, but Dalinar's giving her a lot more leeway to experiment and follow her studies of the Fabrial. And she's doing this whole, the whole epigraph is her talking to the monarchs. And so I feel like it's an example of like the royalty, like, you know, upper class is affecting all of the lifestyle changes and, you know, reintroducing the Fabrials as, you know, a normalized thing. And the fact that she has so much leeway to pursue this is kind of trickling down to, you know, everybody's using Fabrials now, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, we do know that span read are basically everywhere as span reads, and so
like
that's all. Yeah, basically, and it does make me wonder a little just how expensive Fabrials are. Like these heating Fabrials and stuff like that. Is that quite cheap at this point, or are those still new enough that they can't produce them quite as cheaply? So Yeah, that's
I feel like
definitely.
Roshar has an abundance of gemstones, and even Ray's, like when he was talking to Shallan about like the worth of that diamond brome, she's like, it's the worth of the diamond that's in it, and he's like, no, that diamond is just a cup. It's holding the stormlight, and I really like that illusion because it's kind of like he doesn't really care about the gemstones, which most people would be like, oh, gemstones. But it's really the fact that they hold stormlight. That's the real worth of them. And Roshar seems to have so many. So maybe the Fabrial are really easy to produce.
I guess, yeah, their own, hypothetically, the only limiting resource sort of are the artifabrians themselves, because they do keep their secrets. So they probably don't want to have them proliferate quite all too quickly. But yeah, true.
And maybe this is like Navani's whole reason for asking them to, give up their notes and stuff, because she wants to make Fabrial science a common thing, like something that everybody's going to know about.
And I actually have something else to talk about now, if that's okay, because you mentioned it, that Ray said that the stormlight really is the important bit, or like what's important in the gemstone. And we didn't talk about this at all yet, really, what the actual motives of the Ghostbloods probably are. And I feel like from this chapter that, like, Shallan theorized that it's probably about like exclusive access to Shadesmar, but she doesn't really finish that thought in a way. Like, what does access to Shadesmar entail? And Race, I feel, makes it really clear that they are all about getting access or controlling the trade of Stormlight, basically. And I find that very interesting. How he also says, like, how it's about the power of changing the world, even. So,
well, he even mentioned that you can travel with Stormlight if you have a perfect gemstone. And that makes me wonder, like, what if you have a Fabrial that's using the perfect gemstone, and you can bring that off world and use that somewhere else using Stormlight from Roshar?
That's. I think Stormlight probably is, or definitely is the most abundant form of really accessible investiture. So that's definitely going to change the economy quite a bit. And the Ghostbloods, like the way Race talks, is like they're very close to making that plan a reality. Like he says, he already knows how to get stuff off world and things like that. So, yeah. Definitely, I can't see how it won't be a factor in the back half.
And when he tells Shallan, his real goal is power, and she's like, really, is it that mundane? But he doesn't mean like, becoming a powerful guy. He actually literally means investiture. Like that's his whole goal is to be able to transport it.
And then like how he phrases there, like what you will see it as pebbles was what was previously mountains or something like that. So when she finally finds out about all the other worlds and the people in them, and that's going to really expand Shallan's worldview, I feel.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, even now she's talking about Ashen and Braze is like, oh yeah, Ashen Braze, like other planets.
Of course,
big deal. They're just pebbles now, they're not huge mountain, So she's already like learning more stuff, and he's telling her that once she gets his knowledge, she's gonna be wide open eyes to everything that's going on in the Cosmere.
Yeah,
that's what he's implying to us, the reader, anyways.
Oh, well, I also like the line how like Ray says that the mole is just like an invasive species that originated from Shinova. Yeah. Do you know any other species like that? Yeah.
Yep. Yes, this was a juicy chapter, if you couldn't tell.
Yep.
I guess we'll just wrap it up there, since we talked about most everything we wanted to talk about. You can find all of these preview chapters at 9 a.m. Eastern time on Tor.com. We'll let you know on 17th shard.com right at 9 o'clock when they come out. And you can discuss them with us on our Discord, on our forums, and the comments below, wherever. We'd love to talk to you about them. Bye.
Bye. See you next week. Maybe from somewhere else than Shadesmar. We'll see.